Each year the NACS Show brings the movers, the shakers and the fast food makers together, literally thousands of people from around the world for what is one of the biggest trade events in the industry calendar. Welcome to the NACS Show, and I'd like to welcome some very special guests, Klaas Mantel from Shell, Schram from McKinsey, Frank Gleeson from Aramark, of course, NACS chairman this year, and Mize from PDI. Welcome, gentlemen. So thinking, guys, of the NACS Show and what NACS are doing globally, so you can take this either way, if you like. I mean, what's the big, exciting thing that comes to mind for you at the moment? Anyone like to dive in on that?
I think for me, the big things in this show is the innovation and the regulatory uncertainty. Nicotine, fresh food, tobacco, all the changes. Yeah, there's a lot going on, sugar taxes, so that I think the uncertainty piece is interesting. I think also the view on electricity and mobility, lower carbon, the pressures on the environment, that's clearly a big thing. But you really see the innovation in the industry, and that's very exciting to be here, as always, at the NACS Show. We're
being challenged, aren't we, Jakob, in terms of that innovation and trying to come up with something new, redefining the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say within future mobility, I think the good thing to see at the NACS Show this year is actually that people are starting to see it's actually coming. And they're also starting to see that I want to change because I want to embrace the opportunities. Because I think there are more opportunities than threats if you really embrace it.
Frank, is it a difficult year to be the chairman of NACS? Is it a transitional year, do you think, in terms of how NACS sees its role in the world?
No, I don't think so, Dan. I think NACS has been evolving every year. We get bigger and better and stronger. We're a global organization now with members from over 50 countries. What we try to do is bring everyone together to make sure the innovation and the networking is right so that we can move the industry up every single year. And that's what I see, the continuous improvement. Just look at food service here again. Top class technology, top class, discussions, education sessions. The show is a terrific show this year, and I think anyone who's not here should be here, because if you're not, you may not be in business in the next 5 years.
And Drew, NACS very much has a global perspective this year. NACS is in Asia as well as the US and Europe now, very much a global viewpoint. PDI also has a global viewpoint increasingly. As a supplier, what's your view of where NACS is at the moment?
Sure, every year we see something new and innovations and technologies that we see at the NACS Show. Again, we're talking about food service and EV and last mile delivery, and all these great opportunities to create some transparency across the entire supply chain. And what's interesting is there's, around the globe, it's the same issues. It's just everybody's on a little different portion on that life cycle. So it's great for us to be able to participate, not just here in in North America, but in EMEA and APAC regions where we can take our solutions globally.
When Henry Armour makes a speech, a presentation, he's always talking about the future happening in different parts of the world. Now, I know this is something you feel quite strongly about in terms of where the future is coming from. Shell also has that global perspective, Klaas.
I think so.
China, I'm thinking of China and Asia, really.
Yeah, and I think what Drew says, I think the trends are the same. The direction is the same, but the speed is different. And the phasing is different. And then I think the big appreciation, at the moment, is that the world is truly global in terms of the trends in convenience. And I think it's really exciting where NACS is taking this. I think the big breakthrough, was last year at the Convenience Summit AZ in Shanghai. I think that was the third one. The next one is coming in Bangkok. It's really going to be amazing. The innovation in the East. And there's a couple of things why Bangkok is such a great choice for that. I think what you see there is great retail. Convenience retail is great, all the shopping malls. So there's a lot to learn from just retail. But even more interesting is what's coming next. And there's three areas where those trends are playing out, especially in Thailand early on. I think one is the whole payment space. And what you see is the Chinese vendors coming down, Alipay, WeChat Pay. There's the traditional credit card, debit card, and a lot of local grown couponing, and also these wallets. Line, which is the local version of WhatsApp. Banks are in it, so the big battleground for payment. I think that is huge in Thailand. I think the other big thing is new retail, omni-channel. If you look at the Thai market, I think Thai customers are special in two ways. I think they are in the top 3 worldwide of spending time online, and also top 3 in times of spending time in shopping malls. So this whole ecosystem around omni-channel, delivery, people interacting differently with retailers. So that's why it's a brilliant choice to be in Bangkok as NACS. And I think really that is, the start of further integration globally between the Asian space, but also the other things, other parts in the world.
I mean, I think it is a massive breakthrough, isn't it, to have that Asian perspective suddenly. And of course, businesses like Shell have had it for a while, but NACS truly has it now, doesn't it? And obviously PDI, Circle came with the work you're doing with McKinsey as well. Very much you have a global perspective of what's going on. So staying on Asia, thinking about China, and you made a very well-received presentation yesterday which focused on mobility, but also electrification, and looking at the way China's driving that. Jakob, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think, China is a country that when they decide to do things and set a target, they at least tend to achieve it. They are extremely dedicated on being the number one on EVs and on autonomous cars. And I think they are really having fast pace doing that. You can see now they already have 1.5 million EVs. If you look at the car producers, the biggest car producers in the world on EVs, 9 out of 10 are Chinese car producers. So it's a lot happening. The biggest charging station in the world for EVs, 637 fast chargers charging 5,000 cars per day. It's amazing. They have kind of taken a footprint and said, we think this is coming, this is a direction, and we want to be part of it, instead of only looking at the business case tomorrow. They're really planning for the future, and they're doing it with huge power.
From a PDI perspective, do you think it's important to have that? You have a base in Asia now as well, from the point of view of your office, don't you? Do you think that perspective has changed the way you look at your business a little bit?
Well, certainly. So, Bangkok, we've just significantly expanded our office in Bangkok, doubling the folks we have there. We think it's critical to have folks in region to deliver our products and services and into that region, and Bangkok's a fantastic place to have the Asian NACS event next year, so we're pretty excited about that. But EV is exciting. It's exciting because when we look at it around the globe, I think kind of bringing that back to North America, that's a trend that convenience retailers really need to take a look at. So certainly the trends are slower in the U.S. than they are in other parts of the globe. But when you fast forward, years into the future, we're going to have to figure out how do we keep consumers on the, in the stores longer, because they're going to be landing in, convenience retail locations to fuel up their EV cars. So we have to watch these trends globally and pay attention to who's doing the best in each particular region for each trend, whether it's EV or food service or labor or digital. And those are things that are really critical.
So a big question really on that point, does our industry have the technological tools to do that at the moment? Do you think, are we well equipped at the moment to compete with some of the big players outside of our industry who want the share of stomach, if you like?
Yeah, so it's specific to food service, we're competing against channels that have been doing food service for decades and decades and longer. But, when you look at convenience retail, we've really only been focused on food service in our space for, call it, the last 10 years, and we're doing a great job. We're growing the top line, but and we're getting better at the bottom line as a channel, but at least in the U.S. we're still fairly immature in comparison to some other markets. So I think the tools are now becoming available to help retailers run a food service business and accelerate all of their in-store sales. But specific to food service, that's a hard channel to make money. So the top line grows, but unless you can control your food costs and your waste, that's really difficult, especially when the industry is getting focused on healthier items, and that's a challenge.
Frank, I think personally, looking at the senior roles you've had within Aramark and the responsibilities you currently have, you've been on a food journey as well, haven't you? This is something which you've making a career of.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think the thing for me is that the breadth of food service options nowadays and the trends in the market are quite significant where they were 10 years ago. I'm seeing quality as being a big thing and people willing to pay for quality, which is great. Convenience is very, very important in terms of when, time of day, and I'm seeing the day occasions change quite a bit. Health will not stop. It's a huge thing, particularly on the vegan, vegetarian. We're seeing all the young people in our food groups really want it and more of it. In some cases, it's 25% of our menu choices. But the big thing
Well,
that
25%
is vegan or vegetarian.
Vegan.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's driving that? Because this is a big topic, isn't it?
Health. I mean, it's got better. It's better for you. It's as simple as that. And I think the younger people are more aware of their bodies, and they're willing to train and take care of themselves a bit more, and they're demanding these menu choices.
And is that across all the markets that Aramark are in?
Pretty much, yeah. We look across the globe, and I'm seeing the same trends. And the last big one, which I think technology can help a bit with, is the personalization piece, because people want it their way. So using technology to help take friction out of the ordering and the payment is huge, because then they can concentrate on the preparing and the tier around food. The other big thing I see really in terms of growth, it's going to continue. I mean, the food and convenience is growing every year on year. Drew makes a great point. Top line growth is one thing, but can you get it on the bottom line? So that means you've got to manage your inventory, your production schedules, you've got to make sure your labor costs are right. And that's the hardest part. It always is the hardest part for retailers, is the execution, right? And sometimes you see franchise brands have that execution model that's easier to operate versus those who are very sophisticated, like Wawa Sheets, who've worked it out over 20, 30 years.
We can't have you sitting at this table, Jakob, unless you talk about Norway a little bit. Thinking obviously about what's happened in the industry in Norway, and Circle K, obviously you were president of Circle K Europe, you deeply connected to that business over many years, Statoil before. There's been a massive transition in the format development in Circle K, hasn't there, to if you like, drive growth in that business in the Norwegian market, which obviously is a tough thing because of very rapid growth in EV sales.
Absolutely, and I think now I can say it even more neutral. I think actually Circle K is doing a great job. Also seen from the outside now, constantly introducing new formats, very much focusing on developing new food. And here I have to say that getting the Irish business unit on board has been a tremendous contribution.
The Irish have changed the industry.
I'm not just saying that for Frank.
Is it true that the Irish run the world? I mean, is there some truth?
Not yet. I mean, there are 40 million Irish in America, by the way, so just in case you're wondering. So we've infiltrated very well.
Yeah.
But you've made a great point. I mean, if you think about food service in the European markets, I remember the first convenience store that came to Dublin 30 years ago. Right now it's considered the marketplace, and I mean all the operators are considered at least as good as everybody in the best markets, which is phenomenal. So that has grown the market share, it has grown the business, and they're all very profitable. They make a lot of money, they do very well.
And I have to say that in the 90s, early 2000, I remember then being part of this business. We all went to US to get inspiration, to the Wawas, to Sheets, etc. And I mean, there are still very good retailers, but I also have to say that there has been a tremendous catch-up game in Europe. I would say food inspiration. I would more go to UK and Ireland. If you take, for instance, tech, I would go to Asia to look at that and the implementation on how consumers use it. So it's not US alone anymore. I mean, I also think, actually, to be a little bit provocative, I think the US should actually go more out and seek inspiration from China and Europe.
I'll take that point. I think that's a really important point. And if you think about the outreach for NACS, we now have a terrific event in Europe, a terrific event in Asia. There's no excuse for any of the American people here today
100%.
Not to go visit and network with the best in the world. And by the way, the events that NACS run are top quality. The discussions, the challenges we put to ourselves, I think we've really upped our game, which is really important. The NACS show is still the best show, right? And that's why everyone comes here. But we've so much more to add, and I have to say some of the sessions have been absolutely tremendous. Some of the CEO sessions.
I suppose we're at the beginning of that globalization for the industry, really, aren't we, in terms of joining up? And NACS is the glue that can make that happen, isn't it? I mean, it always has been, always will be, and it's in a position to do that now.
To be fair to Henry Armour, I give him huge credit. He's brought the organization in a great direction. I think everybody here in North America understands the value of the retailers from the globe and the value they can bring in the discussion, or the innovation, because as you said, I agree, technology in Asia is amazing, stunning. Even supply chain over there, how they deal with some of the challenges they have. There's a lot of inspiration from Europe. I'm very interested in the EV discussion because Norway, your country, probably has driven a lot of it and is probably the most developed market that I've ever seen. The question, of course, is it scalable and can other countries afford it? Because we all know Norway has subsidized it quite heavily.
Well, let me come in on that point and bring Shell in and Klaas, because I mean, I think obviously Shell has that global perspective, you have to scale it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to say, okay,
True.
what does the future look like? And you've really, I mean, language is important, isn't it, in terms of how we define the industry and growth trends and so on. You're talking about mobility.
Yeah.
Tell us that, what does that mean, Klaas? You know, how do you define that within Shell?
Yeah, I think we've reframed the business as mobility retailer. But I think just on the energy piece, I think what is a given is we have to go to lower carbon. Lower carbon mobility, that's a given. I think EV is a great solution. I think from a Shell perspective, though, it's part of a mosaic of options. We're very big on hydrogen in Germany. If you look at Thailand as part of the summit, biofuels is huge, same in Brazil. So there's different solutions out there, but the common denominator is lower carbon. If I think about mobility retailer, I think we have 3 horizons. One is now, how to run the current business, which is mainly packaged goods, better. And that's where technology, AI, all the stuff that was never possible, we can now do. Better category management. Next for me is next, the fresh food offer. And I think the biggest change I see is that it used to be a choice, healthy or tasty. And that's no longer true. We have fantastic tasting, healthy products. And because the channel we're a, for now, anonymously channel. So therefore, mobility retail, it's that. And I think the last horizon for us is new retail. What Jack Ma talks about, I think that is very true for us as well. So the whole cloud kitchen and all the integration, omni-channel, I think one way of framing a service station is ovens, fridges, freezers, open 24/7 with great people, with thousands and thousands of households within 10 minutes. So it's the hub model,
I agree.
And this is the next horizon. And I think this is where the innovation and EV, tying back to that one, that is a huge opportunity because people will spend longer time on our sites. So exciting future, really.
Fabulous kind of analysis of where we are. Makes me think, I mean, is it a bit of a tough time to be a leader? Because strategy development it's not a simple thing, isn't it? I mean, the world has become highly complicated. I mean, just thinking about all the different things that Shell are managing, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do at the moment.
It's fun, right? Because you can do stuff. Right? It's experimentation, it's learning. I think, to be a follower in these days, it's, that's the real tough role, right? So we're learning. We're all privileged, I think, the roles we have.
And I would say strategy is more important than ever. People tends to say that, strategy is a little bit out because execution, the things go so fast that you need execution all the time. But I strongly disagree in that, because if you're going to move fast and develop things fast, you have to have a direction. It's so costly to kind of shift direction, and the direction, that's the strategy part.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult also, to take the shotgun approach. Things are changing so quickly, in so many different areas. That strategy has to be somewhat laser focused in some particular areas, because we can't be the best at everything. That's really difficult. So pick a few things where you can really stand out.
How do you, one of the questions, thinking about strategy and younger consumers, how do you build an affinity, create affinity between your brand and the younger consumer, given obviously all the things that are happening in the world today around concern about the environment and global warming and so on?
I think the number one most important thing is, as a company, you have to have a purpose. And if we go back to kind of when we were younger, it was much more a kind of a CFO-led companies and purpose and vision, mission and HSE, all of those things. Yes, it was important. It was tick the box. Now with engaging young people, creating a great employer brand, you really have to have a genuine purpose, that you really want to contribute to something and not only earning money. The earning money part is just to be allowed from the shareholders to continue. But what really creates great companies is if you have a purpose that is linked to kind of a contribution to society, to people.
I would agree with you, Jakob. I think the culture in an organization is critical.
Yeah.
Now it has to be an evolving culture.
Yeah.
And it has to be one that's inclusive, because if you don't involve all of the demographics and all of the different groups, you tend to get very channel vision or maybe monovision. It's not really particularly good.
No.
Whereas because things are moving so fast, you need to be able to shift your strategy or your plans quite quickly to deal with the challenges you have.
Yeah, you need to be authentic, because young people see through things. Storytelling won't get you there, right? You need to live the purpose, act what you say you do. And this is the crucial part that has changed, I think.
Totally agree.
Yeah, we talk about sustainability and more healthy, food service items. We have to be really careful not to tell a story that you can't stand behind for quite a long time.
True.
We could talk about these things all day. I mean, it's just such a pleasure to sit with such a dynamic group of individuals, all with very strong purpose. So I'd like to thank you, Klaas, for coming along and chatting to us this morning, Jakob, Drew, and Frank especially, because I think I should congratulate you, my good friend, on such a successful year as NACS chairman. And I think what you do for the industry and how much you give is just phenomenal. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dan.
Well
I mean,
done.
I'm there to serve everybody. It's a team game, so we're all a team together. Team NACS.